Ronald Dominique. A broken boy turned killer, he brought his wildest, darkest fantasies to light. Could they be a result of the abuse he had faced? Was it something or the only thing that made him feel in charge? This is the story of Ronald Dominique. But before we start, I would like you to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. Late in 1997, authorities in Louisiana's southern parishes started discovering human remains, tortured and raped bodies that had been recently slain. For the next 9 years, law enforcement in Louisiana uncovered dozens of these bodies in various locations across the state, including along the side of roads, in bayous, sugarcane fields, and ditches. All the victims were male and most were homeless. He was dubbed the Bayou serial killer or Bayou strangler. He preyed on individuals who led a certain kind of life and almost went unpunished. Now, who is this man? Ronald Dominique was born on January 9, 1964 in Thibodaux, Louisiana. His childhood was difficult, and he lived primarily in poverty, and he apparently exhibited none of the traits that would eventually diagnose him as a sociopath. Dominique was an outgoing student who spent his leisure time participating in the school chorus and glee club, despite the fact that he resided in a small, dilapidated trailer park. He was well liked in Thibodaux for his willingness to lend a hand to his neighbors by doing yard maintenance or bringing them groceries. Dominique's conflicted feelings were hidden under his calm, friendly demeanor. He never came out as gay, but he did spend his nights performing as a Patti LaBelle impersonator at a gay club while dressing in drag. The regulars at the homosexual bar had a different impression of Ronald Dominique than those in his tiny trailer park. Ronald went to the local high school, but he never really connected with anyone there. He was bullied and teased frequently since he did not identify with any particular group. Also, it was during this time that rumors started spreading that Ronald was frequently visiting gay bars, which led to even more harassment and abuse on the part of his peers. Ronald enrolled at Nicholls State University after graduating from high school, but he never finished there. By June 1985, he had already committed his first crime, that of sexually harassing another person through a telephone conversation, for which he was detained and punished. Nothing much happened for the next 3 years until 1994, when Ronald was arrested for DUI. Dominique's first verified victim was 19-year-old African-American male David Mitchell in July 1997. After attending a relative's birthday party, he hitchhiked home to his grandmother's house. 2 days after he was last seen, on July 14th, his body was discovered in a ditch next to a highway in St. Charles Parish. There was ditch water found in David's lungs, and there were no signs of physical trauma, narcotics, or alcohol, according to the autopsy report. The preliminary investigation concluded that he drowned accidentally. Mitchell's father argued, despite the low water level and the fact that his son's pants were rolled up to his ankles, that his son was a strong swimmer and that he had been murdered. Relatives of the decedent denied his sexual orientation, drug usage, and financial difficulties after Dominique's revelations. Both of Dominique's subsequent murders occurred in St. Charles Parish. His first victim was Gary Pierre, 20, who had just been arrested for drug trafficking and was strangled by him in December 1997. No drugs or evidence of trauma were discovered in his system when his body was discovered. On July 31, 1998, he killed another homeless drug user named Larry Ranson, who was 38 years old. Ranson was Dominique's first victim to undergo bondage. Dominique met Oliver LeBancs, then 27 years old, in Metairie at the beginning of October 1998. After his arrest, he said that drug addict LeBancs had offered him sexual services for cash and that Dominique had sex with him in exchange before beating and strangling him. The body of LeBancs was discovered on October 4th on the outskirts of Metairie. The autopsy revealed that Oliver had been contaminated with Dominique's sperm. After LeBancs' dismissal from his employment for drug use, his friends and family confirmed that he had recently taken up living as a vagabond. In Kenner, Louisiana, in October 1998, he pretended to sell crack cocaine to a 16-year-old named Joseph Brown by inviting him into his van. Following their joint consumption, Dominique struck the teen repeatedly in the head with a blunt weapon and then strangled him with a plastic bag. A month later, 18-year-old Bruce Williams also met the same fate at Dominique's hands. In May of 1999, streets of Kenner, Dominique was approached by a young man named Manuel Reed, then 21 years old, who offered to sell him some drugs. Dominique accepted the offer and took Reed into his truck, where he sexually assaulted and killed him before discarding his body in a garbage in the city's industrial district, just a mile from where Brown's body had been discovered. Semen traces from another male, similar to LeBank's, were discovered. A month later, 21-year-old Angel Mejia, a homeless man with a history of drug use, was murdered by Dominique. The murderer attempted to throw Mejia's body in a dumpster, but when he saw that it was already full, he left the body on the sidewalk. The coroner determined that the victim had been strangled to death by a rope after examining the body. Law enforcement found that Mejia, Brown, and Pierre all knew and lived in close proximity to each other during their investigation of the murders. According to news accounts, Ronald was one of Louisiana's most known serial murderers, responsible for the deaths of at least 23 persons between July 1997 and October 2006. Most of his victims were African-American males between the ages of 16 and 46. The authorities found out afterward that some of his victims were homosexuals and that others were homeless. In addition, there was a striking similarity between the bodies, as all of the victims had been raped, tortured, and strangled to death. Shortly after his DUI arrest in August 1996, Dominique was taken into custody and charged with forceful rape. He was accused of trying to bind a man he had forced to come home with him. As soon as the man said no, Dominique reacted violently. On the same evening, according to eyewitnesses, a man escaped via a broken window while only wearing his underwear. The victim, however, could not be located to testify against Dominique after his arrest and trial. Dominique vowed he would never go back to prison. He would subsequently explain that this was why he had no choice but to kill his victims. Dominique's murder and rape of David Mitchell kicked off a 9-year killing spree. Throughout his criminal spree, Ronald Dominique was never suspected of being the perpetrator. After Mitchell's untimely death in 1997, the Louisiana State Police formed a task team comprised of sheriffs from 9 different parishes. As time progressed and the death count rose, the FBI would be notified. Special Agent in Charge Jim Bernazzani said that FBI profilers at the time considered Dominique's case the most significant, due to the large number of victims he had recruited in a very short period of time. Furthermore, Ronald Dominique was revealed to have a type. He preyed primarily on homeless males aged 18-40, considering them to be unimportant members of society whom no one would miss. He met most of these men in gay clubs or while walking through areas where men were out at night looking for Johns. Even though Dominique was unmarried, he would often brag to the other men that he was married and that they could come over to his house to have sex with his wife. While several people accompanied Dominique back to his house, nobody ever saw him as a danger. The normally pleasant nobody flipped a switch when he got home and became a sadist. He would rape and, in most cases, murder his victims while they were bound. When police attempted to apprehend Dominique, he stated that he would not harm the men if they refused to be tied up. If this is true, then approximately 23 men gave their permission to be bound inside a complete stranger's house. Regardless, by releasing even one man, he would finally be ending his reign of terror. One of the men Ronald Dominique let go free, an ex-con currently residing in a homeless shelter, told his parole officer about the near miss nearly 10 years after Ronald Dominique's first fatal murder. Something about his description of being tied up by an older man who appeared sick struck a chord with the officer. The police were able to apprehend Ronald Dominique quickly. He was caught and apprehended, giving closure to all his victims' family members. We are at the end of the video. Make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel.